How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and this is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck and other gaming handhelds. In today's video, I've got 3 topics to cover, starting out with a quick update that'll make your Steam Deck experience better. Next up, we're talking about how EA actually made a good move on the Steam Deck and I hope they extend it to other games. And finally, there's a couple new Windows handhelds coming out that are trying to take on the Steam Deck. We'll see how good they are. This video is sponsored by eWin. I've really been needing a new desk chair that'll support my lower back because since I started working out, it's gotten pretty painful. So when eWin reached out and offered to send me over one of their Flash XL chairs, I was like, sure. It showed up in the mail really quick and I had this thing set up in around 10 minutes and it was a lot easier than the last desk chair I bought, which came with no instructions and a bunch of screws. Everything was already where it was supposed to be, so all I had to do was unscrew screws, put the things where they were supposed to go, and then screw them back in. And it was simple. I was immediately impressed with the quality of this thing's build. Once I got it all together, there was no creaking, there was no noises coming from this thing, the wheels feel great, and when you pull the little switch to lean back, it has a very satisfying click when it locks into place, which I really liked. If you've been watching any of my channels, you know that I love the color black, so I was happy that the default color for this thing is black with gold trim. It matches my basement super well. And just being real, this thing is incredibly comfortable. It's got a nice little bounce back to it when you sit in it. It's got nice lower back support, and it comes with a memory foam pillow that you can lean back and play some Steam Deck in. So as far as I'm concerned, this chair is great. And the coolest thing is, if you want to grab one of these, they're offering a 25% discount. If you want to grab it, use the link in the description and use the code DECK at checkout. Once again, huge shout out to eWin for sponsoring this video. Let's jump right back into it. Real quick, before I jump into it all, I just checked and like 80% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed to it. So whether you've been here for a while or you're new here, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed and set your notifications to all. All right, let's jump into this first news story, which is more of a little bit of a PSA for you guys. If you see that little gear with an exclamation point on it on top of your Steam Deck screen, make sure you update immediately. There was an issue with the last stable update that the Steam Deck got that I actually experienced over the weekend. What it would do is when you were switching from desktop mode to game mode, it would actually freeze on the boot intro animation and you'd have to hard reset your Steam Deck. It's not like a critical issue or anything, it's just super annoying. So if you've experienced that, you thought your Steam Deck was breaking, you should just update immediately because that will fix the issue. I mentioned I ran into this issue. It's because I was installing all of the old EA black box games, like the Need for Speed ones that I loved growing up, like Underground, Underground 2, Most Wanted, and Pro Street. Those games were awesome. If you experienced them like I did, you'll be happy to know that they all have full-on PC ports that are very easy to find and get running on the Steam Deck. I got to give a shout out to one of my favorite racing game channels, Hoki Hoshi. He just did a video talking about some of the best racing games on the Steam Deck, and right at the end, he mentioned these games, and I was so excited to find out that they had native PC ports. He also highlighted one of my absolute favorite racing games on the Steam Deck, Super Woden GP2. This game is awesome. It's like an isometric version of Gran Turismo 4. I think I put like 30 or 40 hours into it at this point. It's extremely difficult, but it's awesome. I highly recommend running it at 50 hertz because if you run it at 60, sometimes when you go around corners, you get a little bit of a frame slowdown, and that does not happen at 50 FPS, and it still looks and runs awesome. All right, that brings us to the second news story here, which is that EA is making a really good move with the Steam Deck that I hope they implement in other games. This update is related to It Takes Two. If you've never heard of this game, it won Game of the Year it came out at the Game Awards, I'm pretty sure, but basically it's a co-op game that's about being divorced. I've heard nothing but excellent things about it. I just haven't gotten the chance to play it, but the reason we're talking about it today is the update it just got on the Steam Deck, which removes the EA launcher from the game. Yes, finally, the EA launcher, which has plagued Steam Deck users for years now with random updates that would cause it to break. Then you have to wait a few days for Proton to get updated to fix the launcher. You do not need to use the launcher unless you're playing online. And it goes a step further by proving that the EA launcher does not need to exist in any way, because if you want to play this game online with someone with like co-op or whatever, you can log into an EA account to get that up and running. But again, you don't need the launcher to actually cause that to work. And the coolest thing about this update is like an extra layer. It removes the necessity to log into an EA account to use Steam Remote Play together. So if you have a friend that wants to play this game with you with like couch co-op, you can use Steam Remote Play together without actually either of you needing an EA account. They've also added a new friend pass to Steam, and this is a really consumer-friendly move, obviously. Like, it's awesome to see EA kind of following in Activision's footsteps. Because if you remember, back when Xbox finalized their purchase of Activision, they brought Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered over to Steam. It was stranded on the Epic Game Store for the longest time, and there were tricks you could do to get it running, but it didn't run all that well, and people immediately found that whatever DRM Activision had required you to be online when you played the game, which is just stupid considering over on PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch, you don't need to be online to play the game. They removed that, which was really cool, and made it so you could just play the game offline, which I'm assuming most people want to do with the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game, because even though I'm pretty sure there is multiplayer, like some component of it in that game, everyone's playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater as an offline single player game. Unfortunately, there's no real precedent set on this happening for games outside of very specific cases. What I'm assuming is that because It Takes Two is an EA original, it's not actually like a fully published EA game. They just picked up some of the development cost. Hazelight was able to go to them and say, hey, we want to open this game up and make it so you don't need the launcher. EA was like, whatever, go for it. So hopefully they can kind of extend this to other games, because that EA launcher has plagued a lot of the games I've been playing recently. The Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remaster runs awesome on the Steam Deck. If you set it to medium settings, it'll run at a full lock 60 frames per second. That is one of my all-time favorite racing games ever. I'm about halfway through a playthrough. They just added the ability to have cloud saves to it, which is great, because the reason it took me so long to get as far as I am in the game is because I would delete it to clear out space because it took up 35 gigs, forgetting that it didn't have cloud save support. And then when I would re-download the game a few months later to pick it up where I left off, I'd realize there was no cloud saves, and it was not really the worst problem ever because that game is phenomenal. I don't really mind starting it over, but it's nice to see the cloud saves have been implemented. I hope they remove the launcher requirement, because that's one of the biggest pains in the butt when it comes to using the Steam Deck. The same goes for Burnout Paradise. This game is one of those games that has never really worked right unless you play the original version, but the remake is actually pretty good. The remaster that Hazelight Studios did is just as good as the Hot Pursuit remaster, so I hope eventually they're able to convince EA to kind of take that requirement away to need the launcher, because these games don't really need it, right? Like, even though there is online capabilities in Burnout Paradise Remastered and Hot Pursuit Remastered, you could check the Steam charts. No one's really in the online modes on those games, so it doesn't really require the launcher at the end of the day, in the same way that something like, I don't know, Apex Legends, which is always online, does. Hazelight Studios is definitely one that I personally am keeping on the map, though, because this looks like their tryout for a new racing game, and if you go check out their website, they very heavily hint that the AAA racing game that they're hiring people to work on right now is a return of Burnout. They say it's AAA. I'm excited. They use the word takedown in their little hint tweet about it, so hopefully they're kind of able to weasel in to EA the same way Hazelight did and get the launcher requirements removed from these games. It is kind of nice that at this point in time, it seems like a lot of developers are giving up completely on having their own external launchers. They're realizing that they're more trouble than they're worth, and when you update them and it stops people from playing games, that stops them from spending money on the store. EA was kind of like a lost cause for a very long time. It took them a long time to actually bring their games back to Steam after they took them off for, I think, the better part of a decade. So it's baby steps here, but it's nice to see them moving in the right direction, specifically with It Takes Two. Let's get these updates for other single player games or games that have online components that are basically dead, so we can play these games on the go without having to connect to the internet and not have to worry about them breaking every time that launcher does get a small update. Anyway, that brings us to the third news story here, which is about a brand new Windows handheld that's entering the market. We have ones that are out there like the ROG Ally, which is being updated to the Ally X. We have the Lenovo Legion Go. Neo seems to release something every 6 months or so, but now Zotac is entering the arena with one that honestly looks kind of cool. This new handheld is going to be called the Zotac Zone, which is like in the running for the worst handheld name I think I've ever heard. But the reason I think people are going to want to pay attention to this one is not only is it going to have a high refresh rate screen like the Lenovo Legion Go and the Ally, it's going to be an OLED screen. Both the Legion Go and the ROG Ally have good screens, but they are LCD. They're high resolution screens, they're high refresh rate screens, but only compared to the LCD screen in the original Steam Deck are they really a meaningful upgrade. If you compare them to the quality of the Steam Deck OLED screen, even though it's lower resolution and lower frame rate, like you can only go up to 90 on the Steam Deck OLED, it does look much better than what you get out of the ROG Ally or even the Legion Go. I'm personally less concerned with higher refresh rates. I think 90 is above where it needs to be on the Steam Deck. I get that people like playing games at higher frame rates, but the vast majority of the stuff I play on the Steam Deck, I'm normally running at 30, 40, or 60. I almost never go all the way up to 90 unless I'm playing something like Animal Well or an indie game that's more pixelated, or, you know, a racing game that's older, like, I don't know, Burnout Paradise Remastered. That's a game that can definitely run at 90 hertz or 90 FPS. It's nice to have that feature there. It's just not something I use all the time. So if that causes the price of these handhelds to increase by including higher refresh rate, it's something I'd be happy to lose in the long run in favor of something more cool like OLED. So it's nice to see one of these Windows handhelds kind of making the leap into an OLED panel. The one thing I hope it's not is native portrait. That's something I didn't really realize was an issue until I started using Windows on the Steam Deck, until I started using the ROG Ally, until I started using the Legion Go. All of those panels are native portrait screens, so you have to actually go into Windows and flip them after you install Windows. It's just an extra headache that doesn't really need to be there, especially when you consider that they refresh vertically when you're using them horizontally, which looks really weird. If you look at your Steam Deck out of the corner of your eye, you can actually see it refreshing vertically, and it just looks weird. I hope in the future there are more OLED panels that refresh horizontally, because that's just a better way to do it. As for when the Zotac Zone is going to be revealed, they say they're going to be showing it off at Computex next week, but unfortunately they're just showing off functional prototypes. They don't have anything ready in terms of a release date, a price. You know, it is going to be cool to see some other Windows handhelds entering the ring, because if all the rumors are to be believed, Xbox looks like they're going more towards making boutique reference devices instead of full-on consoles to compete with Sony with the PS5 or PS6 in the future, or whatever the Nintendo Switch 2 is. It looks like what Xbox wants to do is kind of evolve the Xbox brand into Microsoft gaming and have it be in line with what we get from the Surface team, which they release a high quality laptop that's basically like a reference device for other manufacturers like Asus or a Lenovo or HP. I don't even know what's out there in the Windows world anymore, but you know, it gives them an idea of what performance and form factor they can get at a certain price point, and it also lets them know what materials they can use in their laptops. I think it's really cool. So the way that's going to work with Xbox going forward is the next Xbox is going to be a bit of a reference device, then Asus, MSI, and all these other companies are going to be able to make their own Xboxes that'll run the sort of ecosystem and new operating system. It's going to be very Windows-like allegedly, but not full-on Windows. And the cool thing that's coming from that is Xbox allegedly really wants Steam working on the next Xbox. Honestly, that's a really cool thing to me. I kind of got into the whole Xbox ecosystem thing when Game Pass launched. You could get Game Pass Ultimate, you could play the games on your Xbox, you could play them on your main gaming PC through the Xbox app. A few of them would have cross-save, cross-achievements, and everything like that, and at the very least cross-platform play. I just don't really want to build up a whole nother digital library of Xbox games when I have the vast majority of my games on Steam and PlayStation. Like, I have enough games in two different ecosystems. I don't need to add a third one into the mix. So if I can get a cool piece of tech from Xbox or Asus or MSI that runs a different operating system but also uses Steam, and then I can boot up my Steam games and they'll have presets for whatever this console ends up being, that immediately becomes much more enticing to me as someone who's very ride or die for Valve and PlayStation. The other cool thing is that one of these reference devices Xbox is allegedly working on is a full-on handheld. That is one of the only handhelds at this point in time that I feel like could actually give the Steam Deck a little bit of run for its money. Obviously the Nintendo Switch is going to be huge, but that's going for a completely different audience. You know, people who built up a digital or physical library during the Nintendo Switch generation, they want to give them a way to play these games at a more performant state. I'm all for that, but it's a little bit different than what we'd get out of an Xbox handheld, especially keeping in mind that their goal is to reinvent Windows or the Xbox operating system to be its own little fork that will be a PC that can play Steam games, Xbox games, and even sideload in PlayStation games because of all the ones that are available on Steam. Sony's also allegedly working on their own handheld that'll be able to run games all the way up to the PS5 generation, and that's another one I'm really excited about because the PS4 generation, it's where I built up my biggest PS4 library, and being able to take those games on the go with cross-save and cross-purchase. I'll probably kind of retire buying games on Steam from PlayStation at that point because I'll have the ability to not only play them on my PS5, but be able to take them on the go with this new handheld. And the most important thing is I'll be able to keep my saves and trophies. They are making light steps in the right direction though with this new launcher that they've implemented in Ghost of Tsushima. I tried it out. It's actually pretty cool. It allows you to log into the PlayStation Network, and with that game specifically, it's not a new trophy list. Once you log into the PlayStation Network, if you're a little bit farther in the game on PS5 and then you eclipse that point on the PC save, you'll actually start earning trophies for the PS5 version. So if you dropped off of Ghost of Tsushima like halfway through and you just picked up the PC version, once you pass the point you were at, you'll earn the trophies you missed. This is all really cool because Valve just wins at the end of the day. They get more people using Steam because once you can buy games on Steam, I'm assuming a lot of people will stop buying them on the Xbox store, or they'll get to a point where they'll subscribe to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, they'll play whatever games are on that, but anything that's third party or, you know, stuff that's not available on Xbox Game Pass, they might pick up on Steam, knowing that they can then play it on their Xbox future console, their Xbox future handheld, and hopefully if Valve kind of can woo Sony back like they did in the PS3 generation, they'll be able to play their Steam games on this eventual Sony handheld. But that is something I'm not holding my breath on. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you today. So as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.